We've got a lot of PC hardware news to talk about today, including AMD reportedly now prioritizing RX 9070 XT over non-XT variants. We have reports that Nvidia is charging AIB partners less for memory than AMD is, and apparently memory could get even worse price-wise with 100% tariffs threatened unless US production is increased. There's been some investigations into the controversy of buying all the DLC in Monster Hunter Wilds doubles your performance. Does it really? We have Cyberpunk 2077 VR mod being taken down, Nexus Mods killing its multi-platform mod manager in favor of a Windows-only Vortex app. We have RPCS3 emulator for PS3 games, now over 70% of PS3 games supported. Bloodborne emulation continues to increase in performance and just working better on PC. And Highguard's infamous Game Awards finale reveal was apparently not even paid for, but did it sink the game's chances? We've got some 9850X3D benchmarking leaks, and our ASUS 800 series motherboards killing 9800X3D chips. All right, back to the beginning. Timestamps in the video description if you want to get to the part you care about. How about the AMD reportedly now prioritizing RX 9070 XT over non-XT? Headlines. All my sources will be linked in the video description. I found this from videocards.com, but they're not claiming their own sources. They're getting this from Pro Hardware, which I'm going to be honest, I don't know their track record on this. Here's what they claim, and then I'll give you some thoughts on that. Their claim is, this does not make the Radeon RX 9070 a very good alternative for manufacturers, and according to our information, so just citing some kind of information, its production is not stopped, but the focus is largely on the Radeon RX 9070 XT. So they may produce more of this model in the future at the expense of its smaller brother. On paper, this could help minimize the need for price correction, since the fastest Radeon model is already more expensive, so it is less affected by the increase in memory prices. Okay, so while I don't have a lot of insight in this source of information and their reported sources of information, I do think that regardless of where this information is coming from, I do think that this just stands to reason. It makes sense based on the current memory situation. Based on all of the Nvidia controversy I've talked about in recent videos, it makes sense that if you are going to be supply constrained by the VRAM modules for how many graphics cards you can produce, then you would want to allocate that VRAM in a way that maximizes your revenue as well as profit margins. So the 9070 XT can generally sell for more money than the non-XT version. They both require 16 gigabytes of VRAM, so it would make sense that AIB partners would want to prioritize the more expensive model so that they can get more revenue and likely profit based on the limited supply of VRAM modules. This just makes sense. Just like how the rumors that I've reported on in the Nvidia lineup say that when you've got a 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte, a 5070 Ti that uses 16 gigabytes, and a 5080 that uses 16 gigabytes, it makes more sense from a profits and revenue standpoint for AIBs to prioritize the 5080 for their 16 gigabyte module supply. And so really the same exact line of reasoning would apply to the AMD lineup as well. So regardless of the source of these leaks, I think that this just stands to reason. I think both AMD and Nvidia and their board partners are going to make the choices that maximize revenue and profit, which is to allocate your limited supply towards the most profitable or highly priced models that you have available. Now, on that note, when we're trying to think about what's going to happen with overall pricing, is AMD going to be able to undercut Nvidia here, grab some market share? We're seeing headlines, this one from Tech Power Up, that Nvidia's GPU memory bundles cost less than AMD's, and they're saying that that information is from AIB partners. They're getting this information from BenchLife. BenchLife seems to have some sources within AI. By the way, just AIB and AIC partners kind of gets used interchangeably. Add in board partners, add in card partners. The main idea is AMD and Nvidia sell a GPU chip and memory to companies who then put it on a PCB, stick a cooler on it, and then sell that on to retailers. So those are partners like ASUS, Gigabyte, MSI, PowerColor, etc. So that's what this is referring to. Now, BenchLife does seem to have a lot of insider information from these sorts of partners, and they're saying that on January 16th, NVIDIA officially notified its AIC partners that all bundled GDDR6 and GDDR7 memory packages are now increasing in price. We have been informed, we here referring to BenchLife, presumably from sources within these AIC partners, of the price increase, through familiar AIC partners. So AIC partners that they've talked to before have informed them of the price increase, but we won't specify the exact price here. What we can say, again, we being BenchLife, is that NVIDIA's new prices are still lower than those announced by AMD to its AIB partners. So basically, BenchLife is claiming to have partners for NVIDIA and AMD talk to them about increases to pricing for those memory modules, and that, well, they're both, increasing, supply constrained. That's just the market right now. Apparently, NVIDIA is able to keep prices lower. Now, there's reasons why I think that also makes sense. You might, if you don't follow the actual market share, kind of think that, that AMD and NVIDIA would be on a similar playing field here. But the reality is NVIDIA is a much larger market share. They're going to be negotiating RAM prices in a much larger quantity than AMD will. And they're buying not just for the gaming market, but also, data centers, servers, AI stuff, etc. And so if NVIDIA is negotiating absolutely massive deals, generally, if you're ordering a larger quantity, you have more negotiating power. Now, again, I'm just applying logical thought to this, not insider sources for that information. But that just makes sense that it's possible that NVIDIA can actually just negotiate a better price for memory than AMD can. Now, that's also possible that I'm wrong on that, but that's why I think that would make sense. Also, WCCF Tech has claimed insider sources saying that NVIDIA is also absorbing some of the cost increases for the memory, meaning that they're taking a little bit of a profit margin hit to help keep the gaming GPUs a little bit lower price increases than what it could have been. Now, again, does that sound like NVIDIA? I mean, not necessarily. They like their profit margins, but at the same time, I think they have higher profit margins to work with than AMD does. So because of that, they might be able to take some sort of a hit as well. So all of that points to this leak sounding at least extremely plausible regarding those prices. In the end, what actually matters is what prices do we see on the end market for consumers, and I do updated monthly buying guides for GPUs based on whatever the prices cost that month, so stay tuned to the channel. I'll be following how the pricing adjusts over time. Now, one thing that could make it get worse over time would be 100% tariffs onto DRAM manufacturers shipping into the United States. Now, I found this at PC Gamer. This seems, well, let's just get into it. So apparently this information came out when Micron, who is a US memory company, was breaking ground on a new $100 billion multi-foundry complex in Syracuse, New York, as part of a $200 billion project to expand facilities in America. Now, one of the people there was U.S. Commerce Secretary, and he says, quote, "Everyone who wants to build memory has two choices. They can pay a 100% tariff, or they can build in America. That's industrial policy." So this isn't an actual tariff that is in place yet, as far as I can tell, but this is certainly a talking point from the US Commerce Secretary. So that is something to keep an eye on. Now, it's possible that things like this can be used as a negotiating tactic to threaten these companies to then try to get other sorts of concessions, or again, to get them to commit to building in America, etc. So I'm not saying that there is a 100% tariff hitting on some specific dates, but that is the kind of language that we're seeing being used here. So I mean, potentially, if this encouraged building more facilities, it could eventually help with prices. But it's important to keep in mind that the time it takes to spin up new fabs is years, not weeks or months. So if this did hit, that could be bad for a while. Hopefully, if this is even argued, it would just be once those companies commit to the building project that they're not hit with those tariffs in the meantime. That would be the hopeful take here, to not make prices go even worse than they already are. Anyway, I've been asked a ton of times in my comment section to take a look at the claims that Monster Hunter Wilds PC performance doubles if you buy all of the DLC. Now, I have not had a chance to look at that myself yet, but it looks like Digital Foundry has had a chance to look at that. So, source will be linked in the video description, but here's the summary of their results. Basically, it looks like this is true, although the amount of performance increase or decrease depends on your CPU, and it is CPU limited performance that's being hit here. And they absolutely confirmed that it's checking whether or not you have DLC an absurd number of times, hammering the CPU and reducing your performance when you are CPU limited. Now, the key detail, though, was that this doesn't happen all the time everywhere in the game. It seemed to only be happening when you're near the NPC in town settlement areas that tries to sell you DLC. And it's when you're within the vicinity of that character that these DLC checks run uncontrolled. Now, I did notice some comments on various subreddits discussing their testing and feeling unhappy with it, saying that perhaps the mod that they used didn't cover all times or types of DLC checks. So I'll just say that it's confirmed that there are some issues regarding DLC checks happening in an extremely inefficient manner that can hit performance in a significant way on the CPU, at least in certain areas of the game. That's confirmed. Whether or not it happens in other areas of the game as well is, I would say, still maybe open for debate, but I think what's not open for debate is whether this is a sign of a well-optimized game. In other words, I have been extremely critical of the Monster Hunter Wilds PC performance, especially on its CPU, saying that you can be standing there, it seems like nothing is happening, and yet the CPU is getting absolutely hammered. It just seems ridiculous. And while we don't have full insights into the game code to look for what kind of optimization or lack thereof is happening, this gives us a window into at least one issue that is clearly unoptimized. And it makes you question how many other examples of extremely poor coding practices are happening in this game. And unfortunately, I don't have the answer for that. And but what I can say is the visual to performance ratio on both the CPU and the GPU in this game just seems absurdly bad. And this is an inexcusable example of the kind of insanely bad optimization that never should have made it past any sort of testing. I don't see if, can we see the exact numbers here? Because it's saying that they're blocking literally thousands of checks for new DLC. Here it's showing skipped 50,000, I guess it's behind me right now. It's like skipped 50,000 checks for new DLC in the time he's sitting here. That's insane. Just like check once if the DLC's there. Like, it doesn't Anyway, crazy. It doesn't seem to be malicious, though, in the sense that it's not like the game developers seem to be trying to intentionally make your performance worse if you didn't shell out for the DLC. It doesn't seem like that's what's happening. It just seems like bad coding for the game. Now, in other mod news, because there is a mod to disable that DLC check behavior, in other mod news, I've seen that CD Projekt Red has taken down a Cyberpunk 2077 VR mod. However, it seems to be because it was a paid mod with no free access available, and CD Projekt apparently tried to work with the modder to have it be available for free with like encouragement to pay to the Patreon, etc. But because it was locked to Patreon for only paid members, that seemed to violate CD Projekt's modding policy. And that's why this seems to have been taken down, which honestly to me seems kind of reasonable. The game developers don't have to allow people to profit off of modding their intellectual property. So I like encouraging the modding scene, but I do think there's a fine line on whether mods should be paid content exclusively. Anyway, on the modding topic, I figured I'd also mention that Nexus Mods has killed off its multi-platform mod manager in favor of its Windows-only Vortex app, claiming we were competing with ourselves instead of solving the actual problems. Now, while I'm not super into modding games, so I don't have a lot of my own thoughts on this, good, bad, whatever, I do think that right now, Linux gaming seems to be like, well, it's still a very small part of the market. This has been the most negative sentiment I've ever seen towards Windows over an extended period of time. And at the same time, gaming on Linux is by far the best it's ever been. And we have interest in the Steam Deck, SteamOS, and now the upcoming Steam Machine, seeming to, it feels like we're hitting an exponential curve that could eventually accelerate into Linux gaming being a pretty big deal. So switching to Windows-only options away from multi-platform options on the face value doesn't seem like a good thing. However, commenters who seem to be way more into the modding scene than I am have mentioned that Nexus Mods option wasn't really the best mod manager anyway, and that there's other tools available, so that this is kind of a non-issue. Again, that's not something I have a lot of personal insight into. Maybe you can sound off in the comment section on that. Since we're talking about mods, let's also mention emulators. I found over at Tech Power Up that RPC S3 Simulator now supports over 70% of PS3 games, at least listed as playable, which seems to be some pretty major progress. So that's cool. One of the cool things about the PC ecosystem is emulation, mod support, all of that. So I think that's something to celebrate. And on that note, I really still don't understand why Sony and FromSoft haven't decided to just print money by releasing Bloodborne on PC. But since they haven't, there's been a ton of work on the emulated version, and it seems to be getting into reasonably good state here, according to Digital Foundry's latest video on the topic. I'll just link this in my video description so you can follow up for more of the details on that. But basically, it's getting to the point where if they don't release this on PC officially soon, they should do that before everybody just plays it on the emulated version anyway. I mean, I get that emulation is a little bit more niche, but still, I don't understand how they haven't decided to just print money. Maybe when the PS6 launches, they're planning on a Bloodborne remake as being like a launch title, and then that'll be a eventual PC title. You know, who knows? But man, it just seems like they're just completely overlooking a massive money source. Unless there's any weird rights tied up in like the FromSoft and Sony rights to this or something. I don't know why there would be, but anyway. Another thing I want to mention just on the games topic is, so after the Game Awards, there was the one last big announcement, and it turned out to be a hero shooter, Highguard, which instantly had the internet just flooded with Concord 2 posts as their opinion on this. Now, what seems to be really interesting news breaking on this is that apparently Highguard didn't pay for that final slot, which is really interesting. This is now confirmed by multiple sources that reportedly showrunner Jeff Keighley just really liked the game and offered them that final slot. Some speculation says a different game may have dropped out of that final slot, and there's been tons of speculation about what that game may have been. Some people saying it was going to be Half-Life 3, but then maybe Valve looked at RAM prices, looked at the Steam machine, and sort of are getting cold feet, and that's going to be a Steam machine launch title, potentially, rumors suggest. Anyway, so there's a lot of speculation on what that slot may have actually originally been planned to be filled by, but that Jeff Keighley was really excited about the game, and so gave them that final slot, unintentionally seeming to doom the game. I mean, maybe it'll still be a success on launch, but all of the buzz around the game was just extremely negative. And notably, Highguard has been absolutely absent. There has not been, to my knowledge, a single trailer or playtest or any sort of marketing happen since the disastrous Game Awards finale slot. So, I don't know. I'm always hopeful that games will be good. So I'm hoping that Highguard ends up being a great success. Not my style of game, so I probably won't play it, but hey, I hope it will be a great success. Now, last couple of quick notes is that according to Unico's hardware here, they've sourced on an overclock forum, somebody sharing 5.7 gigahertz overclock on what is censored, but clearly seems to be implied to be a 9850X3D. Which we know is releasing soon. I believe we're a little over a week out from the reported launch date / review embargo date. And they're saying 5.7 gigahertz. But again, I just can't get excited about this because it's like, it's just slightly higher clocked 9800X3D. Woo! Man, the CS just felt really boring from a new hardware launch standpoint. Now, if you are going to get one of those, you may want to question ASUS 800 series boards. Why? Apparently, they have been killing 9800X3D chips, 5 dead CPU reports in 2 weeks, according to videocards.com, and they seem to be sourcing that from various subreddits reporting these dead chips. Now, this is following on a much more extended wave of dead chips reported on ASRock motherboards, with various BIOS releases theoretically helping. I still, to my knowledge, haven't seen any official confirmation that the ASRock issue was ever 100% completely solved. And now we're seeing some issues on these ASUS boards. So another one to keep your eye on? I don't know. So then you wonder, is there some issue with any of the motherboard settings or anything that AMD is giving out? Is this a board partner specific issue? Is there a problem with certain batches of 9800X3Ds? Again, something to keep an eye out, but that's the news that I have for you guys today. Let me know what you think about all of it in the comment section, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.